I've hit go live. Hello, YouTube. This is the second time I'm starting this because I think I got a bit of a false start. Welcome to our first live stream. The live stream is going to be several things. One of them is going to be a discussion about iNaturalist. And, I'll switch my screen here. This is what I want. Um, if you aren't familiar with iNaturalist, it is a citizen science platform where users can post photos of organisms that they've seen when they were just out and about, and their sort of best identification of it, and then other users can come in and correct or confirm that identification. And it's sort of unique because what it represents is a whole bunch of users that are engaging with it at a recreational or a hobby level, but it actually contributes to things that are happening at a scientific research level. And the result is this huge pool of data that scientists really do use. And there's tons of examples of iNaturalist data actually being used by scientists, and this stuff shows up in academic papers. Here's one of them. So this was a case where scientists were studying a reef and trying to get a feel for the biodiversity there. But because they were just, a handful of scientists taking the samples, they got a certain set of data. When they looked at the iNaturalist data that users had submitted, they found out there was way more going on than they had been able to observe. So that was really helpful to them. And another case here where having more people out there looking exposed the fact that there were certain rare species that were showing up in certain habitats that scientists didn't realize were actually still there, because their eyes were limited. But with the addition of all of the citizen scientists contributing their data, we learned that there was more there than we thought. So this stuff does show up in scientific journals. It is used, and it's incredibly valuable. And I've got two of these scientists with me here today who have used this kind of data. If you're a regular on the channel, then you've heard their names. I have Dr. Catherine Scott and Dr. Sean McCann with me today. These two have been a huge help to me as I have worked on this channel and tried to build it. So thank you to those two. And they're here today to talk about a spider that we're still figuring out. And they're going to tell you how you can be a part of helping with that, because we could actually really use your help with this. So before I go further, just a note about the live stream. There will be an opportunity for questions. We'll probably address those sort of after the main discussion. And also be aware there is about a 30-second delay on this live stream. So if we don't say something about your question right away, we're not ignoring you. There is just a bit of a delay. And I don't know how many people we're going to have, so we'll see. We're going to do our best. So without further ado, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Catherine Scott and Dr. Sean McCann. Whoops.
Hello.
Oh,
Hello,
Can you
everyone.
see me?
there we go.
Okay, I think
Hello
we're
there.
here.
You
Hello,
are
how's it
here.
going?
Yes. I am well. How are you guys?
All right. Warm
So,
here in Newfoundland.
yeah, it's warm here too. It's very hot down in my little office here. Um, and I'm just gonna make sure I've got that window there. Okay. Wow. Okay. Um, so you two sort of made this discovery about this candy stripe spider, and you did it while you were studying something else. So why don't you two sort of take us through how did this come about? How did this begin?
Yeah, it was a bit of an accident. And Sean, I am going to share images and you are going to talk through the first part, I think, about kind of how this came about. So I will try to sort of keep up with you.
Yeah, so the story really begins for us and the candy striped spiders and our involvement with them over on Vancouver Island, which is on the far west coast of the continent, just kind of north and west of Seattle. And that map will show you where Vancouver Island is located. It's just a little bit below the 49th parallel. So the place we're doing our research on black widow spiders was a place called Island View Beach, or Tequan in the local language, um, which is just north of Victoria, the capital of British Columbia. And so you can see a view of this beach here. It's got abundant driftwood logs and kind of a backshore area that is a sand dune ecosystem, and that sand dune ecosystem is also littered with driftwood in varying levels of decay. And that's where the black widows are found, and that's where we were doing our research, studying their sexual behavior, including pheromone-based communication. So in the black widow life cycle, there's a little bit of a lull period when the females are brooding egg sacs and nothing much is happening. They've already done their initial burst of predation in the springtime, and they've laid eggs and they're just sitting around, keeping them safe, and not much is happening spider-wise. So it so happens, next slide, that I'm a little bit of an insect photographer, spider photographer, and I like to go out and take pictures. And one of my very favorite subjects to take pictures of, next slide, are sleeping insects. So a lot of the parasitic species of bee, like these Coleoxys bees, they like to spend their nights perched on dead vegetation. And basically they don't have a nest to return to, or they don't have anything dug yet, so they're spending their night perched on this dead vegetation, hopefully avoiding predators, because nothing much likes to climb up dead vegetation because there's no active photosynthesis or anything like that. So next slide. Yeah, so Coleoxys bees and specid wasps. In this case, this is a perch of Ammophila wasps on a sandy beach environment. Basically, they spend their whole night here and usually pass the night without a problem because they're on a nice isolated perch. However, well, this slide I wasn't prepared for. This slide just shows the extent of how big a perch can be. But in 2016, we first noticed that a lot of these perches were being killed. Basically, these spiders were going to these perches and killing some or all of the residents of the perch. So that was not very good for photography, other than for documenting the carnage. But it really led us to wonder, like, how is this spider, the candy stripe spider, accomplishing these kind of nighttime assassination missions and killing so many of these sleeping insects? So yeah, so we did a number of engineered predation experiments where we actually introduced spiders to perches to see what happens. And you can roll the video, and you'll see basically a spider coming up, kind of touching the sleeping insect with its forelimb, and once it's determined to its satisfaction that it is indeed a valid prey item, you'll see exactly how predation attempts occur. For this one, we should have got a little time, but it'll eventually get there, I assure you. So watch this. It's laying sticky silk all around the insect. You can see the glue droplets, and this insect is getting, tied up in binds that it can't break, even though it is a pretty big and strong wasp, or bee in this case. Sorry, not a wasp. So basically, going in for a bite when it's safe, and using its restraint method and its venom to subdue the sleeping bee. So let's show another one. All right, so this one wasn't an engineered predation attempt. This is one we came upon in the wild. We basically saw the spider kind of rappelling over to this perch where we knew that wasps were perched. And so it's a little shakier because it's handheld video, but the Ammophila wasp is basically getting covered up. And you can see the wasp is actually able to respond to some extent. I think that they're woken up a little by the lights that we're using. In this case, it was illuminated just with headlamps and such. So yeah, basically what you've got is a large and formidable insect that's being quickly subdued by a relatively small spider. And, you know, once it's tied up and it's been killed with venom, it's just up to the spider to eat it. So next one. So not all circumstances do the spider succeed, and this is just to show you what can sometimes occur, especially if you're hoping for it to succeed. Basically, a little kick and the spider is vanquished. But this was also an engineered predation attempt, and what we're seeing here is probably the wasp was quite active because we had lights trained upon it, and it was still kind of awake. Anyway, I think
So yeah,
that's it.
thanks for that, Sean. I will so yeah, I'll kind of pick up the story from here. So we once we started noticing these spiders, and we had done this little investigation into the specific behavior that had originally caught our notice, which was the preying on these sleeping bees and wasps. We started noticing them everywhere, and so we kind of went to the literature to try to learn more about them and to find out what other people had already written about these spiders, and what we knew and didn't know about them. So candy stripe spiders, they're in the genus Enoplognatha. There's actually two species, but for simplicity, I'm just going to call them Enoplognatha ovata today, and we can get into the nitty-gritty later if you have questions. But they come in three flavors, which you can see here. So there is on the far left is the rarest morph, that is the all red spot on the abdomen. The most common one is the yellow in the middle, and then on the right you have the two stripes. So this is where it gets its name for the candy stripe spider, and this one is fairly common as well. And this is data from iNaturalist, and I noticed that we do have some Europeans joining us today, so welcome. We're going to talk a lot about North America, but this spider is originally from Europe and was introduced to North America sometime around 100 years or so ago, originally on the east and west coasts, and it sort of seems to be making its way gradually across the continent. So this is basically the range of where these spiders occur in the world, as far as we know today. And previous researchers, mostly a fellow named Bristow, whose book I think I have behind me. Bristow was an English naturalist who spent a lot of time watching these spiders in England in like the 1930s. And he noticed three different kinds of behavior that they do. And once we started noticing them at our field site, when we were studying the black widows, we were able to observe the same behavior. So this first one is web-based ambush, and candy stripe spiders are related to black widows. They're in the same family, which is the cobweb weavers. So you can see under this yarrow, under the flowers, the spider has built sort of a tangled mess of a web, and the white arrow is pointing out the spider who's sort of lurking there in among the flowers. And so this is your sort of typical Faradeiid sit and wait predation style, where the spider sits in a tangle web and waits for insects to come. And so how this web works is it is sticky. You can see the droplets of glue on it, but it doesn't necessarily ensnare the insects by itself. What it can do is when an insect lands on the flowers to drink nectar, for instance, the insect will make contact with some of the threads, and the vibration will be sent through the silk to the waiting spider, and she will rush out and capture the insect. So this is just an example. This one was on Queen Anne's lace, but same idea. The spider was lurking under the flowers. When this wasp came by to feed, the spider rushed out and grabbed it. And this was during the day. So they do capture lots of day flying insects that visit flowers. They also hunt at night. So same idea. This candy striped spider was living on yarrow and has captured a moth that was visiting the flower to drink nectar. So this is pretty standard fare for cobweb weavers in this family. But Bristow noticed, and we also observed this, that they do this web invasion. So sometimes they leave their home web and they enter the webs of other spiders. So in this photo, the white arrow is pointing to a little fly. And if you can see in the background, it's a bit distorted, but this candy stripe spider is on an orb web. So this is someone else's web, a long-jawed orb weaver, I think, who had captured a little fly in their web, and the candy stripe spider invades the web and steals the prey from the web owner. This is unusual behavior for a cobweb weaver, or at least for the typical ones that build a capture web. There is a group of cobweb weavers that are specialist kleptoparasites that do this kind of thing where they go around invading other spiders' webs and stealing their prey, but they tend not to build their own capture web. So they kind of tend to do either one or the other, not both. So this is already kind of an interesting example of a fairly behaviorally flexible predator. When they go into the webs of other spiders, sometimes they prey on the inhabitants themselves. And this was an example where we witnessed this candy striped spider come up to the edge of a web of a long-jawed orb weaver female who had just been courted by the male. So in this picture, the male and female are actually, their jaws are locked together in the typical behavior for mating. And they are in the middle of sperm transfer. And these poor spiders got interrupted by the candy stripe entering the web and wrapping them up with silk and ultimately consuming both of them. So this is kind of an extension of that kleptoparasitic behavior where they not only steal prey from other spiders, but they also eat other spiders. So araneophagy just means consuming spiders. And here's an example of just how clever these candy stripe spiders can be. So in this image, at the top left, you've got this yarrow plant, and the candy stripe spider has its web under the flowers. It's sort of that dense tangle that you can see. And then below the looser tangle of silk is the black widow's web that's coming out from under a driftwood log that you see in the foreground of this picture. And so this candy striped spider has actually integrated its web into the edge, sort of, or the periphery of the black widow's web with signal lines, so that whenever prey start moving around on the black widow's web, that vibration gets transmitted up to the candy stripe spider, and it can rush down and pick off small prey items from the black widow's web. And again, not only do they eat prey, they also eat other spiders. And so this was an example of where the neighboring black widow had just had an egg sac full of spiderlings who emerge onto the web, and they hang out on their mother's web for a little while before dispersing. And so this candy stripe spider was able to enter the web and sort of pick off those spiderlings as well. And then finally, this one I don't think Bristow mentioned, but other researchers recently published a paper about candy striped spiders, again, hunting not on their own capture web, but just sort of wandering around on vegetation and preying on insects like this bug in this image. And they actually found that the candy striped spiders, again, in another show of particular cleverness, eavesdrop on the courtship signals of certain plant bugs. So the bugs are talking to one another and courting by engaging in vibratory displays on the plant. And the candy striped spider is able to pick up on those vibrations in order to locate the bugs and prey on them. So great variety of hunting tactics that they do. But in all this research and reading that we did, we never came across any mention of preying on sleeping insects. So as far as we can tell, this is a new behavior. It hadn't been reported before. We're not necessarily the first people who ever saw it, but we are the first people who wrote it down and published it. And we don't know whether it's sort of a novel thing in North America, if only certain individuals do it, if it only happens in certain locations. But this sort of really piqued our interest. We wanted to know more about these spiders. And so we spent some time sort of systematically documenting their prey at our field site, sort of during our spare time while we were doing our black widow studies, to find out sort of how common this was, at least in the habitat where we were working. And so this is the outcome, basically, of a fairly casual observational study where we just sort of walked along the beach several times, and whenever we found a candy stripe spider that was eating something, we collected the prey and identified it. And what this graph is showing is the number of prey items. So the height of the bar or the width of the bar going from left to right indicates how many of these things we saw the spiders eating. And we have the most common prey being the bees, wasps, and ants, and then bugs, moths, and butterflies, etc. And of course, the colors are indicating that the most common prey types are groups of insects that are really common pollinators. So things that visit flowers. And then they also prey on a variety of other insects that are not pollinators. And they don't just do the web-based ambush predation. The colors of the bars here, I've just put up the sort of key, will tell you sort of the proportion of these predation events that were the result of different hunting behaviors. So particularly for the bees, wasps, and ants that bar along the bottom, you can see that a large proportion of the prey that we found these candy stripe spiders feeding on was the result of them preying on sleeping insects, usually bees and wasps, sometimes dragonflies and damselflies, the occasional fly and butterfly, etc. So this is basically step one in our interest in these spiders. We have an idea at one location over 1 year, sort of what the diet is and some of the predation tactics that these spiders are using. But of course, like most successful scientific studies, we have more questions at the end of the day than we have answers. And so this is just a nice photo of a candy stripe spider feeding on a pollinator, a bumblebee in this case. And so we want to know, these are some of the questions that now we have about the impacts of these spiders. So they are introduced from Europe. They're not originally from North America. So they're kind of a new thing over the last 100 years. And so we'd like to know what kind of impact they're having on the insects here in North America. They might be having an impact on pollinator behavior. Certainly they are killing pollinators, although we don't know sort of to what extent on a broad scale they're having an impact on pollinators. They also might be in competition with native predators. You know, what their habit of making a web under a flower and preying on nectar feeding insects is quite similar to that of many of our flower dwelling crab spiders that we have in North America. So they could be competing for prey with those other spiders. And particularly in ecosystems like the one where we did our study, which is a coastal dune system, which of course is very vulnerable to climate change and already has a number of insect and plant species that are threatened. These spiders, if they are preying on threatened insects, for instance, could have a big impact on species in those systems. And then finally, it's not all bad news necessarily. These spiders are here, and there probably isn't a whole lot we can do about them. But they might actually be having some positive impacts in terms of their presence in agricultural ecosystems where they prey on bugs. Bugs like to eat our food, and if these spiders are around, they might be actually having an impact on pest populations. And one question we have is sort of what is the ultimate outcome in terms of balancing if they're eating pollinators, but they're also eating pests, maybe the benefits of them eating the pest insects in these agricultural fields outweighs the cost of losing a few pollinators. We still don't really know yet, again, on a broad scale, what the impacts are in terms of numbers of insects that these spiders are eating. So these are questions that could occupy me probably for decades to come. But right now we're working on sort of still getting back to the basics in terms of understanding in North America where these spiders are, what time of year they're active, what habitats they're active in, what kind of microhabitats they like. So I talked about them being on flowers, but we also find them on trees, in maple trees, on leaves of all different kinds of plants. So what plants do they like to associate what insects do they like to eat in habitats besides just the single one that we've studied so far. So the call to action here is to please join us. If you have seen these spiders around, all you need to do is take a quick picture of them. And if you stick around for the photo workshop with Sebastian, he will have lots of tips on how to do that and how to have fun with it and really improve your spider photography. Yeah, so how to contribute. Travis talked about the value of iNaturalist. We have a project on iNaturalist. It's called Spider Hunters. I've got a QR code here on the screen, but I will have Travis add links to more information in the description of this video. If
Right.
you're not watching.
Remind me to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll get into the chat after I finish talking as well, and I can provide information there too. And I should say also, so I don't forget, that this is live right now, but it will be available on YouTube for all eternity, I suppose. And I will monitor the comments under the YouTube video. And so if you're not watching live, but you do have questions about how to get involved or questions about these spiders, please feel free to comment on the video, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. So Travis, have there been any questions that you've noticed so far where we should sort of jump in and pause here?
There have been a few. I see that Sean has been in the chat here answering some of these. Somebody was wondering if these were the spiders they might see dropping from vegetation while they're weeding their garden.
Sometimes, for sure.
And so that it's very likely. I mean, there's a lot of spiders that it could be, right? But this absolutely could be one of them from the sounds of it. And somebody asked, and Sean did answer about dropping if they're not in their capture web and they get disturbed. Like dropping might be a common behavior that they would do, right?
Yes.
Just dropping to the ground.
They are not very like, they're bold in their predation. You know, they take on these very large or much larger than them insects who are well defended with stings and so on. But when it comes to a potential predator like us, who is much, much larger than them, if you come up to one of these spiders and kind of shake the plant that they're on, their defensive behavior is to kind of drop down, often on a drag line if they've got one set up. So if you kind of come up to them and notice them on a leaf or a flower or something and you poke around, you might see them drop down and then hang suspended from a drag line, which is a safety line of silk that they kind of always trail behind them. Or if you really startle them and they're sort of not prepared, they might just drop all the way down to the ground. And so that is defensive. They're kind of just like trying to get the heck out of there so that you'll stop bothering them. If you wait long enough, they might climb back up, and then you can watch their behavior and learn something about them.
Right. You know what, actually, Peggy Wolven just mentioned that there's a type of crab spider that looks quite similar to this. So just on a note of identification, is there sort of a quick guide that you can give us to how to differentiate one of these from, like, I know the crab spider she's talking about, and I'm sure you do too.
The crab spider that is most commonly misidentified as a candy stripe spider is the goldenrod crab spider, and they're beautiful. They tend to be sort of a white or cream colored to yellow, and they often have the two red stripes on the edge of the abdomen. So superficially quite similar in terms of overall coloration of red stripes on a pale yellowish background. The key thing with crab spiders is that they look kind of like a crab. So they've got quite a broad abdomen, where the candy stripe spiders have sort of a narrow oval abdomen. And the crab spider's forelegs are really burly and crab-like and will be kind of held out in front of them like a crab's forelegs. So body shape basically is the key thing that will differentiate them. And we'll get into this in terms of iNaturalist. It's fine if you misidentify them. If you see a spider that looks like this, crab spiders are also interesting. Also great to have observations of them on iNaturalist. And if you get the ID wrong in the first place, iNaturalist is a community of people who are really helpful and interested in natural history and identifying things. And so the ID will get corrected and you'll learn something along the way. So it's not something to be super concerned about.
Right. Well, why don't we talk? Are we ready to kind of talk about iNaturalist then? Are
Yes.
we
So
okay? So,
I have a couple more slides, sorry,
oh,
just to
okay,
talk
yeah,
about
okay. You carry on here.
again how how iNaturalist how powerful the data are. So Travis already talked about some studies that have used iNaturalist data. This is just an example of the last published paper about the location or the range of candy striped spiders in North America. So this was published in 1994, and all these dots on the map are records of candy striped spiders that were collected and put in a museum. So that's the gold standard sort of for biodiversity data, is to have the actual specimen, have it preserved in a museum with data about where it was found, so that scientists can go back in and they can double check, they can look at the specimen and confirm that it is what it said on the label and so on. And so in 1994, we knew that these spiders were present on the West Coast, sort of mainly in the Pacific Northwest, about as far east as Idaho. And then on the East Coast, they were present in Atlantic Canada and into Southern Ontario and Quebec and Northern Michigan, New York. And so since 1994, with the rise of iNaturalist, I can't remember exactly when iNaturalist got started, but as of 2018, the map of iNaturalist observation looks pretty similar. There's a few dots kind of creeping a little further east, like into Colorado and Alberta, and a few dots creeping further west into Minnesota and yeah, Illinois, that kind of thing. So already citizen scientists, people using iNaturalist have documented the range expanding a little bit relative to what we had in terms of museum collections. And then in 2020, the map started to fill in a little bit more. And then this is what it looks like today. So this is a huge amount of data. And each of those squares isn't necessarily one observation. It's a pretty large area on the map, and the color of
Right.
the square is sort of relative to how many observations are in that little area of the world. But this is just an illustration of how much data there is to be had on iNaturalist, and these photographic records are still extremely valuable because this species at least can be ID'd quite accurately from photos. And then we also have all the information about the time when the photo was taken, in many cases, the plant that the spider was sitting on, and if it was feeding on prey, we've got an image of that too. So this is really awesome data to have, and I would really encourage you to contribute if you do see these spiders where you are. And I again, this particular project, the Spider Hunters, if you go on iNaturalist, it is limited to North America. But if you are not in North America, if you find these spiders in Europe, please also submit them to iNaturalist. I don't have a project set up yet, but I actually am, as we speak, coordinating with a colleague in the UK to try
Oh,
to
okay.
expand this research project into a collaboration that is comparing the behavior and ecology of these spiders in North America, where they're introduced, compared to Europe, where they've been for much longer. So all data is good data wherever you are. Please contribute to the project. And yeah, so I think we're going to talk a bit now about how to iNaturalist.
Okay. Yeah, so again, I'll probably let you guys mostly take us through iNaturalist, but this is a really great resource. And so you're looking at the data coming from iNaturalist, and let's talk a little bit about what are kind of the useful things that you see, and the things that can take sort of an iNaturalist observation from being, just a simple data point to, oh wow, this has tons of great information. So things like predation or plant associations and that kind of thing.
Yes. So what I'm going to do is bear with me while I get iNaturalist up and share my screen again. What we can do here is I will actually show you how I would add an observation to iNaturalist. If you're completely new to iNaturalist, this might be a little too fast, but there's lots of great sort of primers on getting started with iNaturalist. I'll also get Travis to put some links to those under the video stream or the recording. And I'm going to hide my...
I'm going to make you smaller so that
yeah,
everybody can see the whole screen here. Yeah.
Okay, so whoops, this should be iNaturalist. And this is me, my homepage, but I am going to go to the Spider Hunters project so you can see what that looks like. So this is the project. It's got information, it's got a link to my website so you can read more about what we're doing. And then you can see that we've got, we're climbing up there towards 4,000 observations so far, which is awesome. That is a huge data set relative to what I'm used to working with as a behavioral ecologist, where I'm thinking more in the tens or hundreds of individual observations. So that's awesome. And then here are some examples of recent observations. And I'm going to click on this one. This is new. I haven't seen this yet today. And this is really exciting because this appears to be a predation event.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, this is awesome. So here, this is a candy stripe spider for sure. The user who observed it has put that as the ID, and I'm going to agree with them. So this was from Ontario. That's fantastic. It's now just changed to research grade because it has a location, a date, community consensus. So 2 people have agreed on what the species is, and that's fantastic. And so the really cool thing about this is we can tell, if you're a better botanist than me, you could probably tell what species of plant it's on. I'm gonna guess it's a maple, but we can, at least we know it's a leafy thing, which is useful. It's not on a flower. And this particular observation shows a prey item, which is a harvester, an opilionid, which is it's an arachnid that is in a different order from spiders, but that's really neat. I've noticed a few observations of opilionid prey recently, which I think hadn't been reported before in the literature as far as I know. So this is already sort of yielding new data about the prey spectrum of these spiders. Now, if I want to add an observation, what I would do is just click this little upload button, and I'm going to do it here from the desktop first, just so because it's bigger and you can kind of see what's going on. But afterwards, I will show you an alternative way to do it as well. So a lot of you will be taking photos with your phones, which is perfect. But if you have a camera and you get your photos and download them onto your machine at home, you can just drag and drop or choose a file. So I'm going to go here. I have set up this backyard plog photo to be ready to go. So this is a photo of a candy stripe spider that I took this afternoon in my backyard. And you can see that the time shows up. My phone knows when I took this picture. Because I have location services enabled, my phone also knows exactly where this picture was taken. But if I didn't, then I could move this map around. I could search for a location. So say I actually took this in Gould's, I could search for that, and then I could, pinpoint the location. I can make this circle bigger or smaller depending on how confident I am about where exactly I was, or how cagey I want to be about letting people know exactly where I was. But this was actually in St. John's. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to narrow it down a little bit to there. So that's good enough in terms of location, but you can be as precise as you want. And I'm going to update the observation. I can add notes, so I can say it was on a maple. And then species name. So this is the most important part. You don't want to leave this blank. You do want to guess at least and be as precise as you can. So iNaturalist is pretty smart in terms of it providing suggestions based on what the photo looks like, because it has a huge library of existing photos, and based on what has been seen nearby. And so here it knows that this is a candy striped spider, or at least its top suggestion is a candy striped
Right.
spider. So I could just select that. If I wasn't confident, I could, it's, you know, iNaturalist is pretty sure it's in the genus iNaturalist. I could just go with Enoplognatha. Again, it doesn't hurt to be wrong. If you just agree with what a naturalist says, if you're not sure, the more precise your ID is, the more likely someone who cares about that particular taxon is to notice it and correct it.
Right.
And then the data will improve and you'll learn something from being corrected.
Yeah, and I think that's an important takeaway here is don't be scared of being wrong. The worst thing that happens is you learn something. No one's gonna slap you for it.
And no one's gonna be a jerk about it. People will often suggest, like, if you leave the observation or the ID blank, people will often kindly suggest that you at least guess or say, you know, is it a spider, is it an insect, something like that, to narrow it down so that the ID can be improved. But yeah, don't be afraid. The more you do it, the more you will learn. And as I said, I have found the iNaturalist community to be very helpful, and no one's going to give you a hard time. So if I click submit here, this observation will be saved and it will show up on the map. And in terms of the candy striped spider project, please do join the project. But even if you are not a member of the project, your observations will automatically be included in the data set as long as they are ID'd as a candy striped spider.
Right.
So,
okay.
What I'm going to try to do now is show you how to do an observation on your phone really quickly, because that is how most people will actually be taking pictures, probably. So, in the meantime, Sean, do you have any suggestions, tips, or things to consider in terms of iNaturalist observations while I'm getting this set up? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, you're muted, yeah.
I think Sebastian's going to cover it to some extent for getting IDs of spiders and things to that effect. But, you know, you want to get as many angles as possible, dorsal angle, something from the front so you can see the eye arrangement, document both the prey and the spider, document the host plant if possible. Like, so if it is a flower that you're doing, include the flower, include some foliage. Yeah. And get up close as you can. I know that there's different techniques for doing that. Sebastian is definitely going to go into some of those. Yeah, and just have fun with it for sure, because I think it's a good activity for everybody to do, to get out and take pictures of bugs on their free time, and, you know, try to cultivate that space for yourself to get out and enjoy nature, right?
Yeah, and iNaturalist, I've found it becomes quite addictive. Like, now, whenever I'm out and I see something, I wanna put it on iNaturalist and figure out what it is. Even plants, I love spiders and insects, and I haven't learned much about plants so far in my career, and iNaturalist is even getting me curious about identifying plants. So it's great.
Some say it's a better training modality for natural historians wanting to learn than even, you know, going home and flipping through a book afterwards, because it can be a bit of an instant, you know, this is that, this is that, this is that. And yeah, as long as it's serving up the right suggestions, you're getting
and for plants in particular, I think iNaturalist is pretty good at making suggestions if it knows where you are in terms of what the plants are. Anyway, I think now I have the screen of my iPhone queued up, and so I'm just
but it looks like the actual Zoom call is on top of your iPhone screen. Oh, there we go.
I got rid of it. Okay. Here we go. So we're just really quickly going to go through using the iNaturalist app on your phone. So in terms of navigating iNaturalist and browsing and identifying, you really want to be using the iNaturalist in your web browser. But for actually uploading images, for doing your observations, if you're taking photos with your phone, the simplest way to add your observations is directly in the app, which is free. You can get it for Android or iPhone. So I'm on my iPhone here. I'm going to open the iNaturalist app. Whoops, no, I'm going to open it. Thank you. And if you look at the bottom, so this has just come up with my projects. And at the very bottom of the screen, you'll see there is an observe button right there in the center. And so that's what we're going to press. And then you get this little menu. So you can record a sound, which is not relevant for spiders, but might be for birds or something like that. And you can either take an observation directly with your camera. So if I clicked the camera button, I would be able to, point my phone at something if there was a bug right here and take a shot of it and upload it that way. Or if I've just been outside taking photos with my phone, I can click on photo library. And then here are my pictures. And again, oops. Here is a candy striped spider that I just saw outside in the backyard. So I select that image. I can also select two images. So here I've got two different views of the same spider, which might be useful. So I select those, I click add, and then iNaturalist will create an observation. So it's much the same as what we just did.
Right.
You can change which one is the default image, but both will show up on your observation. You've again got the time, the location. This has got a very specific lat long. And here is where I didn't talk before about geoprivacy.
Yeah,
So
I
right
was
now,
going to say we should mention that geoprivacy. I've used that
yeah,
before.
so I took this photo in my backyard and my iPhone can pinpoint, to the very small area
Yeah, within a
to
few
where my
meters.
backyard is, which we might not want to have on the internet. So right now the default is open.
And
We
open
don't
will
want
pinpoint it pretty much perfectly.
exactly. Yeah. We don't want to use private. That will mean no one can see where it was taken except you. And so that's not useful for science because
Right.
the observation could have been anywhere in the world. So what I would recommend is choosing obscure. And what that will do is it will kind of make a larger area and sort of jitter it a little bit from where you actually were so that someone who goes on and looks at that observation will have a general idea of where it was, but not the precise location.
Right. Okay.
So then you won't be able to sort of zoom in right on my backyard. And then I hit share and we're done. So
And
if I go
boom,
to
it's done.
B again at the bottom there, you'll see, well, it's still uploading. And those are all my recent observations. So that's how you do it. It's really straightforward. Once you get started with it, you'll figure out more about how it works and get the hang. But I'm going to stop there. And
Okay.
I think are we about 10 minutes out from the
From
photo
Sebastian's, yeah.
actually being scheduled to start? Okay.
Yeah. So I see there's been a number of questions that have come up in the chat, but I think a lot of them we actually ended up addressing, which is great. I don't know if anybody has any other particular ones. I know Sean's been working behind the scenes here to answer a lot of the questions that have come up. Yeah, we've only got a couple of minutes, but if anybody has questions that we haven't addressed, now would be the time.
Yeah,
But
Sebastian, have you been monitoring it all? I'm not sure.
I've seen Sebastian in the chat a little bit here, and we're
Okay,
gonna
great.
get going with him very shortly. That is a separate live stream. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So
What I will do is I think maybe I will just go into the chat for a few minutes and try to see if I can address any outstanding questions. But that
okay.
is the end, I think, of the planned content for this one. Thank
I
you so
believe
much
so.
for
Yeah. Thank
bearing
you
with
so much for
us.
being with us. And well, I mean, we're going to carry on here in a few minutes. We're just going to take a little break and then switch to the other live stream. Somebody was asking which organizations. Casey Butler is wondering which organizations you two work for.
Oh, yeah. I am currently a postdoctoral fellow at McGill University in Montreal, and I'm an honorary postdoc at Memorial University here in St. John's, which is where I actually live. So I'm affiliated with that department, but I'm employed at McGill.
Okay. And Sean?
I work for Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, but I also volunteer with a local natural history organization, which is called Nature NL. And yeah, I'm just a natural historian. So also, I live with Catherine, so I'm involved in this work whether I like it or not, and I
That's
do
right.
like
Yes,
it because it's kind of fun.
yes,
Well, and you
we
do a
are
lot of the
collaborators
photography.
in work and life. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it makes a great team for you too. I'm sure, Catherine, you appreciate having someone who can provide such fantastic photography for the work that you're doing. I know how much that can matter. So it's,
Yes. Oh, so much of, I mean, the our paper that was recently published about the candy stripe spiders would not be what it was without Sean's contribution of the amazing photography and videography. And that reminds me also, one of the things that we will put, I'll put it in the chat, but we'll also link it below the video, is the link to all the content from the paper, including the videos that you saw. I know
right.
the live stream video quality of those the spider predation events might not have been the best,
Right.
and so you can go and see them in all their high definition glory at the source if you're interested in watching them again, or using that kicking wasp as a GIF or something. They're all freely available.
Okay. Yeah, and I will try to update that description with all of those links. We can work sort of after to make sure that um, yeah, we'll figure it out all after. Okay. I am gonna have to stop this stream. Now that said, any questions that didn't get answered, yeah, it can go in comments on the stream, which is separate from the chat because it will remain up. So we might have to do it that way. So I think
Okay.
let's finish up this stream here. We got about 5 minutes before we start with Sebastian, so we'll do a quick run. And okay, I guess that's going to be it for this live stream, everybody. And in 5 minutes, we're going to be starting the one with Sebastian. So we're going to take a quick break. And it is a separate live stream on YouTube. So just check the channel. You'll see it there. And we will be starting that shortly. All right. So thank you so much to everybody who joined. And yeah, hope to see you in the next one here.